What's up guys, and welcome to Sam's Life, where, as I said in the previous video, I'm going to be talking about what it is to be actually living here in Ireland and just kind of focus on stuff like on a more local level. So in this video I'm going to get into like what are the true costs in Ireland. It's going to be a bit of a generalization, looking at a few different sectors of what you'd be spending your money on. I know I've done a few before, and there was a couple of years ago, so this will be a bit more of a generalization rather than an actual like breakdown what you'll actually be ending up with like on an average wage, because I know things have changed, and I'm still kind of gathering a bit more information before I want to do that. But what I'm going to get into like is just the sections of what you do spend your money on, and is it worth living here on a wage maybe like sub 40,000, like so. If you're renting and you've got your groceries, utilities, your entertainment, like what is it actually going to be looking like for you? Especially if you want to live on your own. A shared room is going to be a bit different, but it's up to yourself. Like, what do you want to do? Do you want to live with those other people, or do you want to try and get your own apartment? Like, so yeah, let's get straight into it. And so the first section like I want to get into is rent. So I'm not going to get into home ownership because that's very, very variable on like what you're going to be doing. So depending on what type of house you have, apartment, whether you've got people renting with you or just to try to like help with costs, I'm not going to get into buying a house in this particular video. So just focusing on rents, and like the rental market is very, very tight. So it's very, very difficult to get a place in the first place. And when you do, it is pretty expensive. So Dublin obviously is leading the way. Like, it's crazy expensive. It's like 2,100 for a one bed in around Dublin city centre. This is very average. It's mostly, I'd say, is more expensive than this. But you can obviously find some cheaper locations, like, but in and around like 2,100, 2,300 is probably what you're going to be expecting to pay in Dublin. In Cork, it's a little bit cheaper. Like, I'm in Ballincollig. I'm paying around 1,400 per month for my apartment. But if you're in the city centre, it's like 1,800 to 2,000. And then if you want to rent a room, even in Cork, what I'm most familiar with, you're still spending like between 600 to 800 to be in like a decent place. Sometimes you can find some deals, people you know, connections, that kind of stuff, that can make you to be able to find cheaper locations. Like, so if you're earning like a 40,000 euro salary, it's around say 33,000 like after tax. Your rent is going to be eating up a significant amount of your income. If you're a single person living on their own, you're paying in Cork here, getting 40 grand a year, 1,600 a month is absolutely crazy. So you're actually going to be spending like 18 to 20 grand a year on rent. It's just not sustainable at all. Like, so that's why a lot of people have to room share. It's probably a bit okay for couples because you have to split the costs, and that's what helps like me to be able to pay for this sort of thing. So this is crazy. Like, when you compare it to other European capitals or European cities, maybe not so much London. London is extremely expensive, like absolutely everywhere. If you're looking at Paris, also very, very expensive. Germany has a bit more reasonable costs for housing. And I think a lot of other European countries are just not as insane as this. But even if you do get a place, like getting a place is one of the most difficult things to do. Getting it is just insanely difficult. You can have hundreds of people turning up, thousands of people applying for every single property. But this is a whole video on its own. Like, but this is just what it's going to be, something to consider. Like, if you're considering moving here, or you're looking to like move out of your house with your parents and go to live in the city, or you're moving for a job, you've got to consider all this stuff. Like, so if it's going to be rent, it's going to eat up an awful lot of your income, which is just not ideal. Anyway, look, on to section 2, utility bills. So we're consistently told with like heating your home, electricity, we're one of the most expensive places in Europe for this. So the median costs for all of our bills are so expensive. So inside the EU, it's generally that we do spend the most, but this is actually explainable, like, because we don't produce a crazy amount. We don't have a massive amount of natural resources. So stuff has to be imported. Like, so for things to be more expensive in Ireland, it does kind of make sense because you do have to import stuff from the EU or from the UK. That also just increases the price, which is completely understandable, and it does make sense. We also do then have like a lot of like tax and VAT on electricity and utilities, so like your internet, your waste, gas, like there's a lot of VAT and costs on that. Like, so them things they can possibly control and maybe reduce to try and bring down the bills, but yeah, like it's just the kind of the way that it is. They probably need to try to invest into more like renewable sources, try to create more dams like the Arctic. I cannot pronounce that for the life of me, but they need to try to make some other ways around it so they can make things a bit more sustainable. Ireland also has a problem with houses here are just not very well insulated. They're very old, so heating is like always on, or you're using a stove or a fire, and you're constantly having costs that come with that. So if you're lucky enough to be in a place that's got like a pretty good insulation, your bills will be significantly less. But if you aren't, you are kind of screwed, that you're going to be spending an awful lot more money on the utility bills. Like, internet costs are not too bad. Like, I'm paying about 35 euros a month for broadband. Our electricity and gas is something like 160 to 200 a month, which is pretty expensive. We just pay like a level pay, so it kind of helps you be able to like budget it like all over the year. So yeah, that's about utilities. Like, but yeah, we are spending some of the most expensive in Europe, but it is sort of understandable, but they definitely have things that they can improve on. So when you get into the next section, it's groceries, eating well, or you're just going to be surviving. Groceries are expensive here, but you can do it cheaply. So doing like a better research, and saying like for a single person, they're averagely spending around 350 to 450 a month on groceries for a single person. So it helps you in a couple, you can share meals and you can make it a bit cheaper. Personally, we're roughly spending between two people like 100, 110 a week. So it's a little bit less. But we normally eat out like maybe once or twice a week, takeaway or go somewhere. But when you compare the average grocery costs, like to other countries, so you're looking at like Italy, Germany, Portugal, we're a good bit more expensive. Like, so if you look at 350 to 450 is the average, especially if you're getting branded products, like they're way more expensive than in other European countries, because obviously they have less importing to do, and they also have like bulk buying discounts that they can do because they have large populations. So we're looking at 350 for Ireland to 450, Germany 280, Italy 250, and Portugal 220. So in these countries, like, you will be saving a little bit on your groceries. But yeah, if you're spending 450 for a single person in Ireland, then the bill in Germany will be about 200 quid cheaper, and Italy 200 quid cheaper, and Portugal a little bit more than 200 quid cheaper. So that's quite a lot, big difference. So yeah, it is expensive here for groceries. I guess especially if you're buying a lot of meats and fish, like, you can expect that to skyrocket. And then when it comes to eating out, like if you want to get a takeaway, you're probably talking between like 10 to 15 euros, depending on what it is. With delivery and like Deliveroo fees and stuff, you're probably talking like 20 quid really for anything that's like decent, unless you want to just go to like a chipper for like a burger and chips or whatever. But if you want something a bit more decent and more expensive, you probably are going to be talking about 20 quid. And then if you go into restaurants in Dublin, like, you're going to be spending like 20 at a minimum for a main course, so 20 to 25 for anything decent. You can find places with cheaper, so this isn't everywhere, but just a generalization, that's roughly how much you can expect to pay. Whereas like in Italy or Germany, you can get stuff like between 10 to 15, and we're like maybe 18 to 25, like roughly. So it's considerably more expensive. And that comes down as well down to the energy costs. Like, so people are spending a lot on energy. The overheads are more expensive, so they have to pass that on to the consumer. And that's why you see sometimes a lot of places that do close down, especially with bars and restaurants. So a lot of the hidden costs. So section 4 that I want to get into is like the sneaky costs that people don't really realize. Is like things like health insurance, which is optional. It's probably recommended that you do get it. A lot of employers do offer this, but it is probably worth getting, because if you have to go to the doctors regularly or you get hospitalized, the fees can add up. So like if you're just a regular person who goes to the GP a lot, you're probably going to be talking like €65 per visit. At least with health insurance, you can get it at half that back. So health insurance is a bit of a thing that a lot of people should have, but a lot of people don't have it because it can cost like over €1,000 per person per year. And if you want to have a full coverage, like it can be an awful lot more than that as well. So it's just something to consider if you're more worried about your health and your insurance. It's definitely something to consider if you are coming here or like moving out of home. A lot of families have like family plans that help bring down the cost of that as well. So yeah, it's just something to consider. So the internet we briefly covered is like €35 a month, and that's quite general everywhere. So yeah, and your phone provider. So depending on what you do you want to be a bill pay or pay as you go? I've always been a pay as you go person, and I'm on GoMo, so I only pay €10 a month, which is really, really good. I'm on the life thing, so it's always going to be €10. But I know like a lot of people who are on like bill pay and other plans, like most it's 20 at a minimum now. Some places do offer €15, 48 go Conquer, they also offer €10, but their service may not be the best. But yeah, so it depends on what you have. If you're buying a new iPhone on bill pay, you're going to be spending quite a lot of money on your phone. So yeah, it's just something to consider as well. So transport here in Ireland is rubbish. Pretty much we have no trains really, only connecting between the major cities. So if you live outside the city or in a commuter town, you basically have to drive. You cannot rely on the public transport to get to places on time. Even like 20-minute drives can be 2 hours on public transport, because you have to like go into the cities or get out again. So it's not worth. It's just yeah, you just need a car here basically, and it also comes with major costs as well. So like car insurance can be over €1,000. If you've got a lot of experience, it can be okay and it can come down. Personally, like my insurance is still like 800 to 900 a year, which is really expensive, and I've got no claims for 10 years. So it's still pretty expensive, and I know it's a lot cheaper in other European countries. You've also then got like your road tax, which is pretty dear. Like mine's like 400 a year, and then you've just got to get like your NCT if your car is old enough to having to keep going every year. And your petrol prices are pretty high here as well. As I said before, it's all to do with like the importing, getting it here, and then also there's a hell of a lot of tax on it as well in Ireland. So that brings up the costs as well. And it's something to consider, like if you are moving here and you just move into like Cork City or Dublin. Dublin you may be okay without a car. Cork you might be okay depending on where you work. If you work in the city centre, live in the city centre, you'll probably be fine, but then you won't be able to like explore on the weekends, and it's difficult to maybe like get outside the city like when you want to. So it's just something to consider. So if you're on like a €40,000 salary, like going through all them costs, said you're probably going to have around 33,000 roughly after tax. I'm not exactly sure. They do have a rental credit, which is €1,000 a year, which is like €88 a month basically that they give towards your rent. And you qualify for that if you pay over 5,000 a year on rent, which is basically most people. That can just help you out a little bit. But on a 40,000 salary, after you've got your food, your bills, your car, your rent, you're not really going to be left with a lot. So you do need to try and get a high salary here, and it's not achievable for everybody. And this is what leads to the immigration of a lot of Ireland's young people just feeling a bit of a hopeless situation with how expensive everything is here, and then you just can't get out of it. Like, so you do need to really try to secure yourself a good paying job, because it is just basically living here becomes impossible. I've seen a lot of YouTube videos say that, and it's just something that you have to really consider. Like, if you were going to move here, you need to secure yourself a pretty good salary, or you're gonna have to end up living with like a lot of different people in a shared accommodation, and splitting bills and all that can make things a little bit more affordable. But if you want to do anything leisurely, like, it's pretty expensive. And this would say, like, is it worth it? Is it worth it? So if you're earning a high salary, it's like Ireland is a great place to live. You've got a lot to do, nice restaurants. There's a lot of places to go that are really nice, like outside the city and stuff. But look, the reality is that Ireland is just one of the most expensive places to live in Europe. And compare that with other places in Europe, is your purchasing power could probably be less. So yeah, it's like, what do you guys think? Do you think Ireland is too expensive? I know most people who watch this will agree that it is, and you don't get your bang for your buck, and you've got high taxes and all the rest of it. But yeah, this is just a little brief like synopsis on what it is like here. A brief kind of explanation on the cost of stuff and why it is that way. But yeah, look, the main thing that people really do like to complain about is the housing stuff, and I think it just deserves to do a whole different video on it, because things have changed since the last time I did it, and you can kind of go into more detail on all that sort of stuff. So if you enjoy this, gave you a brief synopsis of what it is like here in Ireland.